So grab something to drink. We can sew together. Um, I have my coffee, so you can get whatever it is you like to drink. Let me show you what I'm working on. This is a table runner that I'm going to be putting on one of my end tables next to my couch. And I have used, you can see, some of that same strips of fabric that I kind of do the cross between crumb quilting or scrap strips that I was working on in one of the other videos. And it's one of my favorite ways to sew, and it's also one of my favorite types of quilting because you don't have to match anything, and you get this nice look to it. So it's it's the colors. We're going with these colors for the living room. So I've just got the binding now to sew on this. So before as I'll try to put the picture up. I bought a bunch of, I want to do some of the eco-friendly quilting. I've always loved that, and that's the name for it now. Basically using scraps from sheets and pillowcases and shirts and things that you can buy at a thrift store or that you might be getting rid of to make quilts. And I had, so this was my box. I had this chuck full. I bought 4 or 5 pillowcases, some men's shirts, and I still have some of the men's shirts, partly cut up. Um, Everything in blue, and some of it was striped, and some of it was white. And I'll show you that picture with the quilt. It's the best picture I could get of it so far. But I absolutely love it because I was trying out a new technique and it worked really well. And so I have, at some point, I'll probably do a video about that. But right now, what I want to talk about is the leftover scraps that I have because I needed, I mean, it probably only cost me $20 to make that quilt. And I had as far as the fabric. And so I still, with that, still have some left over. Well, you know, I can't have that. I need to use it up. So I of course did then this that I'm finishing up today. And I just used some of that scrap on the back. This is just the back. But you can see that's a man's shirt. Just love that. And I'll tell you that not all of the shirts that I used were 100% cotton. Like this one, I think is a bit polyester, but it's a table runner. It doesn't have to last forever. I can always make more. But it was just fun, and I just love that. Love that plaid. I love blue, and luckily my husband does too. Um, so then I was going to use some of these to make a backing, but I decided I was going to make another table runner, but then I realized we don't really need another one. We have another table, but we already have something there, and apparently my husband's fallen in love with just a couple of orphan block stars that I made into a piece, and he claimed it, owned it, and so now it's next to his chair, so he gets to keep it. So I needed to know what to do with this fabric. So what's my next project? I will be working on, this is what I used for the quilt that I showed you. This is a piece of a bedspread. We had gotten a bedspread for free because we had bought some furniture. As you know, the house down here needed all new furniture after the hurricane. So my husband found it on Craigslist, a beautiful dining room set for a great price. And I can't believe he got so lucky off of Craigslist of all things. I said, you should probably look for more like, Marketplace or something like that. And he went for Craigslist, which I haven't looked at in years. And beautiful, but it was an estate, and this man was getting rid of his aunt's, his aunt passed away and they had no children, so it was fallen to him. And so he had just this old bedspread that he covered the table with as we brought it home. And I also have another, like, it's kind of like a mattress pad slash um, bed skirt. So there's a lot of it, and so this was like 1970s, not real popular anymore. Had a couple of paint stains on it. They'd started to use it for like a drop cloth, but it was like king size. And so I said, we'll keep it because we could use it for a drop cloth, but we don't have a lot of room here. So I decided to play with it and I made that quilt with it. So I've taken this, I'm using it as the batting, and for this piece, I'm going to do some coasters out of. So for this piece, I have, I'm going to put this on one side, and then I have, this was the second half of that piece. I'll put that on the other side. They'll match. I got to turn them the other way. And then I'm just going to do some straight stitching through this one, I think. That's what my plans are for this. And then I'm going to cut them into like 5-inch, maybe 4-inch squares, or 5-inch for coasters. And I might keep them here. I might give them away. Doesn't really matter. They end up, something happens with them eventually. Then the next thing, so then I still have scraps. So the next thing I went to is, we're going to be on a 20-hour driving trip in a couple of days, driving back to Michigan. And so I decided, I looked in my UFOs and my stuff and thought, well, what can I do for handwork? I had my cousin, these are all English paper piecing, but they're huge. So my cousin went to a garage sale, and she said, there's this whole box of English paper piecing. Do you want these? And I said, yes. And I gave her a price, and she got them for me. Whole box stuffed full. And then they went through the hurricane, but a few things did not get ruined because they were in Ziploc bags that a lot of them come in. So that was nice. This is one of them, and I've not known till now what I think I'm going to do with them, but I am going to start using the shirts for some of these hexagons and probably make another table runner. I'm not sure what. So I cut a whole bunch of the hexagons out of the shirts. This is a pillowcase. I don't know exactly what that'll turn into yet, but it'll be cool. And it should be really fast because those pieces are big. So that's a work in progress. But it also allows me to have something to do when I'm driving. Same thing with this. I cut up some of these too. I had started a project, but most of that project did get taken away by the hurricane. But I have a few pieces, and I'm going to do something with those. I will probably do, not these colors, but I will probably turn them into, you know, the flowers. There's half the flower, and then you keep going all the way around. With matching colors. These were just leftovers, but I cut a whole bunch of those in case I run out of the hexagons to do, and that should keep me busy till I get home. Okay, so those are the things I'm working on. So I wanted to, as I work on this, I wanted to thank you for those of you who commented on my videos. I want to read to you a couple of the messages people sent me because they're very interesting. So this is one from Anita Hamrick. Hi, Anita. It says, good morning. Just found your channel and enjoyed this video so much. My first quilt shop was in a log cabin turned into a quilt shop, because I had been talking about the first quilt shop I'd ever been to. And I asked for people to share. It was nice and country style with quilts on a bed, all hand sewn by Mennonite women. That's very interesting. Bought my first kit and got advice when I brought the small quilt back to this shop to show them, and it was my first experience with the quilting police. My whole life I've always made clothes and even a shirt for my dad with confidence, but this made me so nervous, as it does. And we all have had experience with the quilt police. We're going to talk about this. A few years later, a wonderful mom and daughter quilt shop opened up by me, and I found encouragement there, and no perfectionists. Just what I needed, and I've been enjoying quilting my way for years. I subscribe to your channel. Thank you for your encouragement, for the joy of quilting. God bless. So let's talk about this for a minute. So first of all, she talks about the first shop. Now this is really funny. The first shop was, everything was hand quilted by Mennonite women. That's really funny because just recently I had one of my neighbors that I had just met. She she was asking me, she's like, "Oh, you're into quilting," and I said, "Yes, are you?" And she said, "No," and she says, "So what kind of quilting do you do? Do you?" And she said, Do you mean like quilting like 12 stitches to the inch?" And I'm just like, "Oh, sorry," and I was just like, "No, but yes." So at first I'm like, how does she know, if she's not a quilter? How does she know that the standard for hand quilting for decades, hundreds of years, has been, can you get 12 stitches to an inch? That, if you're not familiar, that is what people used to refer to as hand quilting, and anything less than that they considered bad hand quilting. And now, as you know, I do not, that is not my standard. And I don't think it's necessary. But so as soon as she said that, I'm like, I better not show her my quilts or explain to her what big stitch is. She had grown up around Mennonites, but so she'd been in a community with Mennonites, but she had not learned to quilt. So that answered that question: is how did she know that old rule? But then I'm thinking, oh, well, if she's seen the Amish quilts, hers was actually Amish, but if she's seen the Amish quilts and Mennonite quilts as what she considers, the standard for quilting, I'm thinking, well, that's not that's not what I do. But it was just very interesting. But you don't, and this goes back to the quilt police. You don't have to worry about these standards. I have a theory on the quilt police, and that is that they people who are judgmental, whether they mean to be or not, about other people's quilting, it a lot of times it will stem from they were raised in a generation and in a household that you had to do everything perfectly and by the rules, especially women. And so that being, and I know some of you are nodding your head, you do remember that. That being the case, then they will only they like quilting because there are specific rules, supposedly, at least there used to be, very specific rules on how you do things and how you don't do things. And it's taken me years. Not, I had, my mother was always very encouraging. She let us, as I've talked to about before, she let us, here's the sewing machine, here's the fabric, do what you want. And if you want help, ask me, go ahead. She was busy. She had 4 kids. We were just keeping ourselves busy. And but then I found out there were a lot of quilters who they had not started quilting until they found someone who would teach them the rules because they did not want to learn and do it wrong. So that is where I think a lot of the quilt police stems from. It's either a generational thing or how you were raised. But it's taken me years to realize I can break that. I don't have to go by those rules, but it takes a lot of time. And unfortunately, like Anita, her first experience with quilting was with someone who was telling her that she hadn't done it well. And nothing crushes you more than that, than you trying something new and then someone telling you it's not good. Well, the problem is that it's not going to be good at first. Nobody's is. It's you start, and I always give myself this rule: when I start something new, I can do several hours of it. So for a quilt, when I started big stitch quilting, I can do several of them before I decide if I like it and if this looks good. Some of the other things that I've been slower to learn, such as the English paper piecing, it's not great at first. And so the more you do, the better it gets. So to be crushed like that is really awful. And I'm sorry that happened to you, Anita. And it's just a reminder for me and all of us that when you are with a new quilter, whether she's young or whether she's not, it new quilters need to have a stress-free experience. It's going to be stressful enough just learning. Learning anything new is completely, different lingo, different techniques. It's already stressful. Let's not crush people with the quilt police. So, if you run across a quilt police person, and I do, I just sit back and I think, you know what? It's okay. She's got a specific idea in her mind, then her standard that she lives up to, but that is just not mine. That's not my quilting. So I let people know that yes, I hand quilt, but a lot of it you're going to consider, you know, big, because when you I learned long ago I didn't want to do hand quilting if it was going to be trying to get 12 stitches in every inch. That was not fun, and I have a rule: if it's not fun, I don't do it. But I had fun doing it my way, which is always the rule. If I could do it my way, I love it. So I just did it my way. And again, had a mom who said, you know what? That's just you. That's interesting. She still has to remind people of that. That's just how she is. That's she does her thing, and you should do yours. So that's what I have to say about that. So now here's another message from um, at Berserk Elise. I too found it stifling. She's talking about when I had mentioned that in my sewing room, things are not going to be perfectly clean. All right, I'm going to just show you. Look over here. What? No, I need to have kind of a mess going. I need to have stuff available. So I need to have things available, and I can't really explain it, but the rooms that are perfectly beautiful, I love to look at them, but I find a hard time sewing in them. So, or a house living in it. I'm getting better at that, but the sewing room has to be everything everywhere because that's what I'm comfortable with. Because we have so much stuff. So anyway, this Berserk Elise agreed with me. She finds the same thing. So I assume that some of you feel the same way. Some of you do not. Some of you need to have it picked up before you can start. Not the case with me. I had my back in the day mother-in-law. She said she she likes to do hobbies, but she has to have the house clean first, which meant that, you know, for me, that meant, oh, I'm never going to get to the sewing. If I tidied up the room so it was everything put away every time I wanted to sew, I would spend too much time in my mind cleaning up. I just want to sew. I don't care what disaster is around me. I just want to sew. I just want to make. And so I skip to that. But you know, then it gets out of hand sometimes, like mine has now, and I have to get it. I got to get it organized, which I will a little better. But that's fun because then Berserkly said, I too find it stifling. Happy to find a channel as yours. Thank you. And she subscribed. So very nice. She also said one of my videos where I had showed you some of the things that I had purchased unboxing when I first got down here this season, that I had not put the links there. And I apologize. That is on my list. I am going to get to that, but I apologize. I did not get to that right away. If I don't get that in when I edit, it's a hard time for me to get back to it, but I will. And then talking about the big stitch quilting, she says, I like to use crochet thread number 12, number 10, or even 8. I started with the craft thread when I made my grandson's quilt as a toddler. He's 10 and a half now, and the quilt is still in great shape. I like the chunky stitches. Since it was hard to pull through, I did my next quilt with the sizes mentioned above. Big stitch quilting is the only way I will hand quilt anymore. I may combine it with some machine quilting, but I really like the relaxation of the big stitch, big thread quilting. I may try 6 strands of floss on my next quilt after my autumn quilt. I have a lot of it. A couple of things there. So I'm glad you're finding as much fun with the big stitch as I do. Again, most of the quilts I hand quilt now, I am doing by big stitch because I can get them done faster, and I just really like the texture. Now, I have a couple of quilts that really, really are begging to be done with my more traditional hand quilting, and I might do those, but what I find is I kind of put those off to the side and go, oh, let's big stitch this one first. So we'll see. I'll get to it. UFOs, they'll be there. They'll wait for me. So that's with that. Now, I have not used the crochet cotton yet, but I have some of that. And so because I'm not familiar yet with the sizes, so I just got to pull out what I've gotten from garage sales or different places where um, people had some and gave it to me because I started doing crochet on pillowcases. My mother does some beautiful edgings, and so I'm learning to do that. Uh, doesn't look as good as my mom's yet, but it's going to be a while before it does. But I do have fun doing it. So I do have some of those. I do know they come in different sizes, so I'll have to pull those out and use some of that too. Now, I will warn you, if you are thinking that it will help you use up those threads, it will, but you're going to find that you're going to end up buying more of it because you're going to want the colors, the variety, so that you can use it now for big stitching, which there's nothing wrong with that. But as I've said, I think I've told you before that when I started big stitching, I started it because I had just a lot of pearl cotton that I think I got at a garage sale or somebody gave it to me, a big Ziploc bag full of these skeins of pearl cotton. And and I had a bunch of embroidery floss too. So my idea was, well, let's do some big stitch. I get to play with my threads and then I'll use up some of these. Well, yes, that happened. I used them up, but then I started um, buying more colors and doing a lot more with the embroidery threads so that now I have even more than I ever had to begin with. But it's funny. It's okay. It's okay. They, again, just like scraps, multiply on you because, okay, I can finish this, but I need another green. And then I better order, because if I order online, I better order a couple kinds, a couple colors, because I'm not sure exactly which one I think I want to use. And I just love threads. So I'm like, sure, I'll order a couple different kinds. Well, now I have extra. So you know how that goes. They will multiply. But absolutely. And the 6 strands of embroidery floss, I actually use 3 because you can use 6, but now I've gotten to where I mostly use 3 because it gives me roughly the same effect. It is easier to pull, and my thread will go a little farther. Now that I don't need to just get rid of it, I realize now, well, you're just going to buy more. So, you can do either one, whatever's comfortable to you. And as I've said before, you can do hand stitch, you can do big stitch even with regular thread. Someone else asked me, and I don't recall your name right now, but she said she has a quilt, a batik quilt, already sandwiched and ready to quilt, but she wanted to big stitch it. Um, and then she said, help, because batiks are harder to needle through. They are a tighter weave, so they just are always, they're beautiful, but they're harder to needle through. I usually do not use batiks if I'm going to do big stitching. I will do machine stitching on those, but you can do it. And if I were to do it, what I would do is I would use regular thread because it will be easier to pull through. That's going to be your biggest problem. I would use a very sharp needle so that you can have an easy time poking in. And you will definitely want to take advantage of those bigger stitches because that will all mean that you'll need to do bigger stitches. So on the one hand, big stitch is perfect. On the other hand, you just got to watch what you're using for thread. Now here's the best part about big stitch is that you can try a certain thread, a certain needle, and do a long line of it. If you hate it, it's so easy to pull out, really easy. So that's always nice because if I try something on my sewing machine and I don't like it, ooh, I got a lot of work to pull that out. And so it makes me a little bit nervous. But with Big Stitch, I never nervous about trying new things because it'll pull out so easily and I can try something else. And that's how I've learned too that you got to have less detail in your design. So I do lots of straight line and I love it. I mean, it doesn't need more than that. This is straight line. This is straight line big stitched. See how you get all that nice texture? And I used a variegated thread so that I get different pops of the white color coming in and out. The thread was like a light blue to dark blue variegated, which was fun to work with. Love it. Now that my new rule is everything I bring with me and have here for sewing, I have to take all those projects back, even the ones I didn't finish. My space here is so small that I even lost a little bit of closet space too because of how we had to rebuild the closet. I have to really be careful not to just chuck that thing so full that I can't open the closet, which is what I've done before, and it was not good. Especially because this is also our spare bedroom. So when people are here, they're never going to be able to use the closet. But they happen to see in it, I would hate it. I would like it to look a little organized, which I have to do by keeping it less stuff in it. Now I have to make my limit is the space that I have. I know this sounds obvious to a lot of you, but this is not obvious to me till now. So here, that space is one short dresser and that closet. And so everything has to fit in there, and that's all I get to keep here. And at home, same thing. I have a lot more space at home, but I have filled all of it. And now, if I'm going to put more UFOs in there, I am going to have to either finish some up or get rid of them. So I'm going to keep working on this, and you keep working on what you're working on. And feel free to tell me what you're working on. And if you can put pictures, if you know how to do that, into the comments, please do. I love to see what everybody's working on. And we will see you soon. Thanks for joining me.